Welcome to Bedtime Stories. Part 1. The Invitation That Came with Conditions. If you're watching from anywhere in the world right now, drop a white down pointing backhand index in the comments. This story is for every parent who's ever been made to feel like they're not enough. My name is Catherine. 58 years old. I've been a waitress at the same diner for 32 years. The Sunrise Diner on 4th Street. Coffee, eggs, and the regulars who became family after my own husband walked out when my son Danny was just 3 years old. I raised that boy alone. Worked double shifts, took night classes when I could, made sure he had food on the table and dreams in his head. And Danny. He was my miracle. Smart, kind, ambitious. He got a scholarship to an Ivy League school, the kind of place where the other kids had last names on buildings. He called me every single night, no matter how late. Love you, Mom. Thanks for everything. Those calls kept me going through the worst shifts. 5 years ago, he met Sophia. Sophia Sterling. As in the Sterlings. Her grandfather was Harrison Sterling, the shipping magnate. Her father, Charles Sterling III, ran a financial empire worth more than some small countries. They had private jets, multiple mansions, a foundation that gave away millions, and made sure everyone knew about it. When Danny first told me about her, his voice was nervous. Mom, her family is really wealthy. Like, really wealthy. Does she love you, baby? Yeah, Mom. She does. Then that's all that matters. I met Sophia a few months later at a small cafe, Neutral Ground. She was lovely. Genuinely warm, with kind eyes and none of the arrogance I'd expected. She hugged me like I was already family. Danny talks about you constantly, she said. I feel like I already know you. For 2 years, that was our relationship. Sophia and Danny would visit my little apartment for dinner. I'd make my famous meatloaf, the one Danny begged for as a kid. We'd sit around my small table, and Sophia would ask about my regulars, my day, my stories. She was a sweet girl. Then came the engagement. Danny proposed in Central Park. It was beautiful. He called me right after, crying happy tears. Mom, she said yes. We're getting married. I'm so proud of you, baby. So happy. 2 weeks later, the invitation arrived. Not a wedding invitation, that came separately. This was different. It was a thick, cream-colored envelope with the Sterling family crest embossed in gold. Inside, a handwritten note from Charles Sterling III himself. Dear Catherine, we are delighted to welcome you to the Sterling family. To ensure we can properly celebrate this union, we request the pleasure of your company at a private family dinner at our Greenwich estate next Saturday at 7 p.m. Transportation will be provided. Warmly, Charles Sterling 3. Transportation provided. Like I couldn't afford an Uber. But I pushed the thought aside. Maybe they were just being thoughtful. Rich people did things differently, right? Part 2. The dinner at the castle. The car arrived at 5 p.m. sharp. A black Mercedes with a driver in a suit. My neighbors were definitely watching through their curtains. I waved, trying not to look as intimidated as I felt. The drive was an hour and a half. The Sterling estate wasn't a house, it was a compound. Iron gates, a long winding driveway lined with perfectly manicured hedges, and finally, the main house. It looked like something from a movie. Columns. Fountains. A circular drive with more black cars. A butler, an actual butler, escorted me inside. The foyer had a staircase that belonged in a museum. Paintings that were probably worth more than everything I'd ever owned. I clutched my purse like it was a life raft. Dinner was in a formal dining room with a table that seated 20. Already seated were Charles and his wife, Victoria. Victoria Sterling was a woman in her 60s who looked like she'd never smiled in her life. Her hair was pulled back so tight it looked painful. She wore diamonds just to sit down to dinner. Catherine, Charles said, rising. He was polished, charming in a practiced way. So wonderful to finally meet you. Please, sit. Danny and Sophia weren't there yet. Just me and the Sterlings, and two other people I didn't recognize, a man in a severe black suit and a woman with a tablet, sitting slightly apart. Victoria barely acknowledged me. Her eyes swept over my dress, the nice one I'd bought specifically for this, the one that cost a week's tips, and her lips pressed together slightly. That was it. That one micro-expression told me everything I needed to know about how she saw me. Wine, Catherine? Charles asked. Thank you, but I don't drink much. Water is fine. So sensible, Victoria murmured, and I couldn't tell if it was a compliment or an insult. The small talk was excruciating. Questions about the diner, phrased like anthropological curiosity. How long have you been in the service industry? Translation: how long have you been poor? What does a typical day look like for you? Translation: tell us about your little peasant life so we can feel generous. I answered honestly, keeping my chin up. 32 years at the Sunrise. Best coffee in the city. My regulars are like family. How charming, Victoria said, and her smile didn't reach her eyes. Finally, the door opened and Danny and Sophia rushed in. Danny's face lit up when he saw me. Mom. He hugged me tight, whispering, "You okay?" "I'm fine, baby." Dinner was served, some fancy thing with truffles and foam that I couldn't pronounce. Throughout the meal, Victoria peppered me with questions disguised as curiosity. Where did I grow up? What did my parents do? Had I ever been married? The implication being, why weren't you good enough to keep a man? Danny kept squeezing my hand under the table. After dessert, Charles cleared his throat. Catherine, before we discuss wedding details, there's a small matter we'd like to address. The man in the black suit stepped forward. He placed a thick document on the table in front of me. A non-disclosure agreement, Charles said smoothly. Standard practice for family matters. It simply ensures that any discussions about the wedding, the family, or our affairs remain private. I looked at the document. It was dense. Pages and pages of legalese. I don't understand, I said. I'm not going to gossip about the wedding. Victoria spoke for the first time, her voice like ice water. It's not about gossip, Catherine. It's about protecting our family's reputation. You work in a public establishment. You talk to people all day. We simply want assurances that our private matters stay private. The insult landed like a slap. She was saying I was a liability. A waitress who couldn't be trusted not to blab to customers. Mom, you don't have to sign anything tonight, Danny said quickly, his face flushed with anger. We can talk about this. It's already decided, Daniel, Victoria said. This is non-negotiable. Any marriage into this family requires discretion. Surely your mother understands that. Sophia looked mortified. Mom, that's not. Hush, Sophia. This is how families protect themselves. I looked at Danny. His eyes were blazing, but I saw the conflict there. He loved Sophia. He wanted this marriage. But his mother was being humiliated. I made a decision in that moment. Not out of defeat. Out of strategy. I'll sign it, I said quietly. Everyone looked surprised, including Victoria. Mom, no, Danny protested. It's fine, baby. I picked up the pen the suited man offered. Your grandmother used to say, paper is patient. It waits. I don't mind signing papers. I just want my son to be happy. I signed. Victoria's smile was thin and satisfied. Charles nodded approvingly. Danny looked sick. The woman with the tablet scanned the document immediately, confirming it was filed electronically. The Sterlings didn't take chances. On the drive home, Danny called, his voice shaking. Mom, I'm so sorry. I had no idea they were going to do that. I'll call off the whole wedding. Don't you dare, I said firmly. You love that girl. She loves you. I've survived worse than a piece of paper. You focus on your future. Let me worry about me. But Mom. Daniel Sterling to be, listen to your mother. I said I'm fine. Now go make up with your fiancé. I'll see you at the wedding. I hung up and stared out the window at the dark highway. The NDA sat heavy in my purse. I hadn't even read most of it. But something told me I was going to need to understand exactly what I'd signed. When I got home, I made tea, sat at my little kitchen table, and read every single page. And that's when I found it. Clause 47, buried in the fine print. Part 3, the clause. Clause 47 stated, in dense legal language, that in the event of a divorce within the first 10 years of marriage, any pre-existing family assets, including those acquired before the marriage, would be subject to review and potential redistribution based on family harmony considerations. But the real kicker was a separate document referenced in the clause, a prenuptial agreement that Danny had signed 3 weeks earlier, without my knowledge, and without his own attorney present. The NDA I'd signed wasn't just about confidentiality. It was a trap. By signing it, I had also agreed not to discuss anything related to the Sterling's financial affairs, including the fact that Danny's prenup was one-sided, drafted by Sterling attorneys, and contained provisions that would leave him with nothing if the marriage ended, while also binding him to perpetual silence. They hadn't just silenced me. They'd set my son up. I didn't sleep that night. By morning, I had made a decision. I would keep my mouth shut, play the grateful waitress, and attend the wedding. But I would also start digging. My only resource was the internet and my regulars. One of them, a man named Jerry, had been a paralegal before he retired. He came in every morning at 6 a.m. for black coffee and the crossword. 3 days after the dinner, I slid into his booth with a fresh pot. "Jerry, I need a favor. And I need you to forget I asked." He looked up, curiosity in his tired eyes. "Kathy, you've been filling my cup for 15 years. What do you need?" I showed him the NDA, just the signature page, not the full document. If someone signs something without reading it, how much trouble are they in? Jerry studied the page, then me. "Who signed what, Kathy?" "Hypothetically." "Hypothetically, it depends on what's in it. NDAs can be broad, but they can't force someone to aid in illegal activity. And they can't prevent someone from reporting a crime." He paused. "Is there a crime, Kathy?" "I don't know yet. But I'm going to find out." Over the next few weeks, I became a different kind of waitress. I listened differently. I asked different questions. I learned that the Sterling Empire, for all its glitter, had cracks. Lawsuits that were quietly settled. Business partners who disappeared. A shipping subsidiary that had been investigated for labor violations but never charged. And I learned something else: Victoria Sterling had been married before. Her first husband had died in a boating accident 25 years ago. The case was closed, ruled accidental. But there was a daughter from that marriage, a woman named Rebecca, who had been disinherited and never spoken of. Finding Rebecca took weeks. She'd changed her name, moved across the country, and was living a quiet life as a librarian in Oregon. I called her one night, my heart pounding. "Rebecca." "Yes." "Who is this?" "My name is Catherine. My son is engaged to Sophia Sterling. I need to talk to you about your mother." Silence. Then a shaky breath. "How did you find me?" "I'm a waitress. I'm good at listening." Rebecca agreed to meet. I used 2 of my precious vacation days to fly to Portland. We sat in a quiet coffee shop, and she told me her story. Her father's death hadn't been an accident. He'd discovered that Victoria was funneling money from their joint accounts into a secret fund, a contingency, she later learned, for her eventual marriage to Charles Sterling, whom she'd been seeing for years. When he confronted her, there was a fight. He ended up in the water. The official report said he slipped. Rebecca always knew different. "I tried to tell someone," she said, tears in her eyes. But Victoria had already spun her story. "I was a troubled teenager, angry about the divorce, making up lies. No one believed me. Charles certainly didn't. He married her 6 months later and adopted Sophia. I was erased. Does Sophia know? She was a baby. She has no idea." Victoria made sure of that. Rebecca grabbed my hand. "Why are you telling me this now? What's happening?" I told her about the NDA, the prenup, my growing suspicion that Victoria was still playing games. Rebecca nodded slowly. "She doesn't change. She just gets more sophisticated." She reached into her bag and pulled out a folder. "I've been collecting evidence my whole adult life. Bank records, emails, a witness who saw the fight on the boat. I've never had the courage to use it. Victoria threatened to destroy me if I ever came forward. And she can. She has the money, the lawyers, the power. But now you have me," I said. "And I have nothing to lose." Part 4, The Wedding and the Warning. The wedding was 3 weeks away. Danny was blissfully happy, oblivious to the storm brewing. Sophia was radiant, planning every detail. I smiled, I helped, I played my part. But I also started leaving a trail. Every conversation with Victoria, I subtly recorded on my phone, legal in our state. Every interaction with Charles, I noted. I became a silent observer, cataloging every microaggression, every veiled threat, every hint of their true nature. The week before the wedding, Victoria summoned me to another family meeting. This time, it was just her and me in her private sitting room. "Catherine," she said, pouring tea with perfect precision. "I wanted to speak with you woman to woman. About the future." I sipped my tea, waiting. "You've been very cooperative. I appreciate that. But I want to be clear about expectations." She set down her cup. "After the wedding, you will naturally want to be involved in their lives. Holidays, grandchildren, that sort of thing. However, the Sterling family has certain standards. We have our own traditions, our own gatherings. It's simply more appropriate for Sophia and Daniel to participate in those. She was telling me I wouldn't be welcome at Christmas, at birthdays, at any major family event. I understand, I said quietly. You want me to step back. I want you to understand your place. Her smile was razor thin. You're a lovely woman, Catherine. But our worlds are different. Daniel chose to marry into our family. That means embracing our way of life. And our way of life doesn't include dinner gatherings. I set my cup down with a steady hand. Victoria, can I ask you something? Of course. Did you ever love anyone? Truly? Or has it always been about power? Her face froze. For one split second, I saw something behind her eyes, fury, maybe, or pain. Then it was gone, replaced by that polished mask. You're out of your depth, Catherine. Remember that. I left without another word. The wedding day arrived. It was everything you'd imagine: flowers imported from Holland, a string quartet, 300 guests in designer clothes. I wore the best dress I could afford, sitting in the second row, watching my son marry the woman he loved. Victoria avoided me entirely. Charles gave a toast about blending families that made my skin crawl. Danny and Sophia danced, oblivious, happy. I waited until the reception was in full swing. Then I found Victoria near the dessert table, alone for a moment. Victoria, I said, my voice low. I need to tell you something. She turned, annoyed. What is it, Catherine? Rebecca says hello. The color drained from her face. It was the first time I'd ever seen Victoria Sterling genuinely afraid. What did you say? Rebecca. Your first husband's daughter. The one you erased. She sends her love. And she sends this. I slipped a folded paper into her hand, a single page from Rebecca's file, showing bank transfers from 25 years ago. I have the rest. And I have recordings of every conversation we've had. Including the one where you told me my place. Victoria's hands trembled. You signed an NDA. NDAs don't cover crimes, Victoria. And attempted murder. Fraud. Those aren't covered by confidentiality. You can't prove anything. I don't have to. I just have to make sure the right people see what I have. Including your daughter. Including Charles. Including the board of the Sterling Foundation. I smiled, the same smile she'd given me so many times. I've been a waitress for 32 years, Victoria. I know how to read people. And I know when someone's bluffing. She said nothing. For once, Victoria Sterling had no words. Here's what's going to happen, I continued. That prenup my son signed. It gets voided. Rewritten with a real attorney, his choice. You will treat me with respect at every family gathering. I will be at every Christmas, every birthday, every major event. And you will never, ever threaten my son's future again. In exchange, Rebecca's evidence stays buried. She gets to live her quiet life. And you get to keep your empire. Victoria's eyes blazed with hatred. But she nodded, just once. Good, I said. Now enjoy the rest of the reception. The cake is lovely. I walked away, my heart pounding, and found Danny on the dance floor. He pulled me into a hug. Mom, this is the best day of my life. Mine too, baby. Mine too. Part 5, The Aftermath. The prenup was quietly rewritten. Danny never knew why. Sophia never knew anything changed. To this day, she doesn't know about her mother's past, about Rebecca, about any of it. Some secrets, I've decided, are better left buried. But I kept my recordings. I kept copies of Rebecca's files. Insurance, in case Victoria ever forgot our conversation. She hasn't forgotten. At the first family Christmas, she greeted me with a smile that almost looked genuine. I sat at the Sterling table, drinking their wine, eating their food, and watching my son and his wife open presents by the fire. Rebecca and I stay in touch. She's never coming back east. She says she's happier in Oregon, surrounded by books and quiet. I don't blame her. Last month, Danny and Sophia had their first child, a little girl they named Catherine. When I held her in my arms, I looked up at Victoria across the hospital room. For one moment, there was no war between us. Just two women who loved the same child. Maybe that's enough. Or maybe it's just the beginning. Either way, I'm still at the Sunrise Diner. Still pouring coffee, still listening to regulars. But now, when people ask about my family, I just smile and say, they're wonderful. Complicated, but wonderful. And they are. If you believe that no amount of money is worth your dignity, smash that like button. Subscribe for more stories about ordinary people facing extraordinary challenges. Share your own family stories below.